And oh, sorry. Okay, so
Happy Pride! Today is the Boston Pride Parade and we're super excited. We're gonna head over there in a couple of hours, but we wanted to document Lauren's story as well and share it. So today's video is all about Lauren.
me. Okay, so even though my whole life I have been attracted to and have been with women, I only came out a couple of years ago, actually, when I met Jenny. My story, I grew up in a really conservative state. I'm from Arizona. Lots of cacti. It's kind of funny when I look back because growing up I played softball, which is, you know, super stereotypical. I was the catcher, and like all through middle school, like little league, all the way through like my senior year of high school, and super involved in school and loved that. And I had a boyfriend maybe or two in high school. I was not interested in dating boys, but I did it because I was like, what you did. But I would always break up when like things got like a little serious. I'd be like, we need to break up, no explanation. I think my junior year I knew a girl who was a lesbian. I had like an attraction to another girl, and I wanted to hang out with her, but things never really went anywhere. Okay, so when I was 17 I was in high school still, and I had a friend of mine who I absolutely fell in love with, and she was older than me. She had graduated high school, a little taboo. But I started spending all my time with her. It was over the summer, and I completely fell in love with her. This was my first experience falling in love. I wasn't really sure, but unlike my experiences with boyfriends or dating, I was really willing to just like go all in because I had fallen in love, and I didn't really know what that meant. I wasn't thinking about what that labeled me as, but I knew that like I just couldn't stop it. You know, it's kind of like when you feel just that, you know, infatuation, and you just cannot like hold yourself back from like going all in. So this girl that I fell in love with, she actually was Mormon. This was my first experience with Mormonism. And so what was interesting about this is that I did not really fully understand that me having a relationship with her was in conflict with her religion. I guess I kind of logically knew that if I had thought about it, but did not process it as part of like what was going on with us in our relationship. So it was looking back kind of strange because we were involved. I was in love with her, and at the time I really felt like she was in love with me. And I think she was, but I can't speak on anyone else's behalf. So what was really crazy is that she introduced me to Mormonism. She would talk to me about religion, and I was always very intrigued with theology and had a lot of questions and critiques for Christianity. That's my background, is very kind of in that realm. So she would talk to me about religion, and in fact I decided to join Mormonism, was baptized into the Mormon church as a result of my relationship with her. At the time, I didn't even realize if I get baptized into this church, this means I can't be with you or can't be with any women.
Yeah, nobody told you that.
No one really brought that up. Yeah, it's like I kind of knew, and in fact, if I thought about it, it's like I was having this major cognitive dissonance because when I had to have this interview with a leader, and
in order to be baptized.
In order to be baptized, and he asked me if I had ever, like, there's a series of questions: if you've ever like had an abortion, if you've ever committed murder, or if you've ever been gay, had a homosexual relationship.
The three worst things.
The three worst abominable things that like known to mankind. So I said no. I just felt really weird. I didn't even know this guy, and I did not feel comfortable talking about my relationships, nor did I think it was any of his business, so I just said no to all three and was like, oh, moving on. That was like the most that it got talked about ever. Okay, so this girl that I was in love with, and my first love, etc. 17. She got married. She got married to a man. She got her things in order and got back to BYU in Utah and met a guy, and within a few months I got married. It was super traumatic for me at the time. I was heartbroken, as any 17-year-old would be. I spent the next 3 years trying to get over it. I spent my 20s thereafter in and out of Mormonism. I spent quite a few years away and then years back, but all through my 20s, I spent that time with having relationships with women. So it was a conflicted time for me with religion and my own sexuality, because I just couldn't quite reconcile, I couldn't quite not be with women, but I also really felt like attached to Mormonism for a while. It gave me a lot of structure. I wanted to believe in it. I wanted to think that I could be with a man. I had never been in love with a man, and I to this day have never been in love with a man. And although I also had relationships with men.
So how did you identify throughout this time of like your whole 20s? How did you identify sexuality wise?
I identified as straight. To the whole world, I was straight, but I kind of chalked up my sexuality and all my relationships and experiences with women as like experiences, as like happenings. I knew that I was in love with this person at 17, and sometimes actually I would like rename pronouns if I wanted to talk about the like loves of my life or like my significant relationships. I would just use a male name that was similar to the name of the person, or I would use he rather than she, because it's really Joseph. But it felt problematic to me to not feel like I had any like major relationships to talk about. It's like they had to be erased, and so to like cope with that, I would talk about them in male terms, so that I like among girlfriends, and like, you know, girls love to sit around and talk about boys, and I love to sit around and talk about those things, but I wanted to contribute and to be authentic to myself. I couldn't say that I'd never been in love, or that I'd never had sex, or that I'd never been with anyone, so I would just rename the pronouns, which is, I think, in the end, ended up taking its toll on me and contributed to a need to really come out in a major way.
So when was the first time that you yourself identified as a lesbian?
Once I met you.
The first time that I ever heard Lauren talk about sexuality was way before we were even dating. But I had been telling Lauren and our friends in general that I was interested in becoming a therapist, and maybe I'm going to become a therapist, and maybe that's what I'm going to do for school, and I'm particularly interested in homosexuality and helping Mormons who identify as gay.
You said intrigued by.
Oh, I said
I'm intrigued by homosexuality.
And this was, I was very closeted at this point.
Yeah.
And Lauren had responded by saying, kind of almost defensively, well, I don't believe in labels. I feel like when you label someone as gay, that blah 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 blah. And this is coming from, obviously, like, we're both active Mormons at this point.
Entrenched.
And that was I was kind of like thrown off by that. I was like, why the fear of labels? But I had no idea. I had no idea that Lauren was gay at this point. Not because, looking back, there weren't like messages or hints or whatever, but just because because like what Lauren said, she would retell her history, and it was these wild stories with like men, and so I just had no reason to doubt that she was making up or switching pronouns. I had no reason to think that that was what was happening, and so yeah, so that was the first time that our conversation had ever crossed the threshold of even talking about sexuality, and that's how that went.
Eventually Jenny came out to me, and
You immediately revealed, like, well, I've had experiences.
Yeah, like right away I was like,
I was like,
I've had experiences with women. And oh my god, I think you know. Like, as if she would know. So,
yeah, you like thought I knew what you were talking about.
I was like, you know what I mean. Wink,
I
wink,
don't know what
you're
you're
gonna
saying.
judge. You know what I'm talking about, girl. So and then I recount one experience. You
And
know?
this is like over the course of a couple of weeks. She'll say, oh yeah, and I was with this woman.
And I was with this other woman. I was with this other girl. I was with this. By the third one, she looks at me and says, "You really think you're not a lesbian?" And I was like, shocked. Like, oh my God, no one has ever used that word toward me. And I was like,
you act like it's an insult.
I did, and that's what's really lesbian. I really, and that reveals my psyche at the time. I was so closeted and internally homophobic that I myself was afraid of the term lesbian, or afraid of being accused of being gay or bi or fluid or queer or anything. And I think this comes from a lot of things. Arizona is very conservative, and I didn't have any gay friends who were cool. I didn't have any cool queer role models. I didn't know of any, I don't know, and I think I just had my identity wrapped in this idea that I'm generally well liked by people. I see myself as this one way. I'm not comfortable being seen as gay, and I did not want that label. I didn't want it. I was afraid of it. And I'm ashamed looking back of my fear of myself.
No, don't be ashamed. It's
Okay.
it was part of your journey. How did your immediate family react when you came out to them?
My family reacted really well. I'm really lucky, not everyone is. I told my mom first. I called her up, and funny enough, my mom was not surprised. She actually, not at all. She said, this is something I kind of already knew in a way, and Lauren, like, she kind of like went back and like recounted some of my history as a teenager and as through my 20s in like, in her mind, really obvious ways that I was a lesbian. My mom said to me, Lauren, I always thought if you wanted to like do this thing where you wanted to be in this conservative religion and marry a man, maybe you can do it, maybe you'll find the right person and it'll work. But if not, you're gonna have to like deal with this at some point. But it was really respectful that my mom never pushed me, and that worked for me. Sometimes people probably think, oh, well, if someone had like talked to me and I had an ally. But actually it worked for me that my mom didn't press me just because of my personality. I think I would have recoiled. My dad's family was really supportive. I have a bunch of step-siblings, and they were all really supportive, even though they're really religious, they're Christian. They're very open-minded. My brother's really cool, and I'm really lucky to have a supportive family.
Do you regret your time in Mormonism?
Yes and no. I think regret
Really?
is... Yeah, well, you're surprised by that? You're surprised by the yes, or you're surprised by the no?
I'm surprised by the yes.
I think regret is a tricky word, and regret is a tricky emotion, because I think our experiences are our experiences, and we just, like, it's part of our life journey, you know? And certainly I'm grateful that I met Jenny. Mormonism led me to this babeliciousness. But I think the regret I have with Mormonism is just that it closeted me further when I already was very afraid of my sexuality. And I think that's a shame.
And you had bishops tell you
I had
straight
bishops
up,
tell
you're
me,
not gay.
you're not gay, you're just compassionate to everyone. Well, compassion doesn't sleep with people. Okay, we're gonna cut that out. That's terrible. But, okay, so, yeah, like, people would tell me you're not a lesbian, people would tell me, like, you need to, like, pray harder,
Or
and,
don't
like,
label yourself.
just don't label yourself, pray harder, like, you can, like, this is fine, and, like, really shoved me so far in the closet, I didn't even know there was a closet. It was such a big closet, I just thought it was, like, a room. So, that's the yes side of the regret.
And I think, to be clear, you happened to have the unlucky experience of being around Mormons that did have that worldview. That
Right.
like, gayness wasn't a thing and that it could be cured.
Yeah.
But that is not...
That's
like,
not all.
nobody in Mormonism told me that.
Sure, and that's not all Mormons, and
But
there
it
are
happened to
people
be,
on the
like,
fringe. Yeah.
In your circle, both in Arizona and in Rexburg, Idaho,
Yeah.
that happened to
Definitely, definitely. So I don't regret my time, just because, again, it brought me to
Because
Jenny.
me.
I mean, I don't really feel like regret is a productive emotion to focus in on.
Yep.
Is that it?
I think so.
Are we done?
I think so. We are
done.
going to put this camera stuff away and go outside. It's really nice in Boston today.
Yeah.
And we're going to watch the parade and meet up with some friends.
Yep.
So we're very excited. Thank you for watching. How do we end it?